Coming up next on The Health Hustle.
There are 2 points in your business career or in your fitness career, in your marriage and everything else. There's the point where you start and the point where you get serious. And so I started and I stayed at that start line for a long time, or just like kind of easing past it. But it wasn't until I got serious that I actually saw the growth. And so what I would advise to anybody is, if you're going to do it, fucking do it. And if you're going to do it well, and do it long enough to where, not just to where you see results, but to where you can't miss. And so when I started getting serious in my business, that's when I started seeing amazing growth. And I think people, they see some success, they back off, or they get complacent, or they hit a bump in the road and they stop. And so I just barrel through it, get serious, go pro, whatever you want to call it, right? But that's the biggest advice. That's the biggest change in my business personally. Don't just start, but get serious.
What up, y'all? Corey here. On today's episode, I got a chance to sit down with my buddy Mark Pinales, who is a born and raised Austin Texan, which is honestly kind of rare in this town. He went to the University of Texas. He's an Olympic trial qualifier in 2016 for running. He's a business owner of Vertis Coaching, where they work with over 150 athletes at a time, which is crazy to me. He has 4 cats. He refuses to read books, which I found was the most interesting thing for a business owner. His current focus is to continue to build his personal brand and to focus on building a business that he can eventually pass down to his kids. Some of the things we get into specifically on this episode are how he got into running in the first place. It sounds like it's something he's been doing his entire life. The overlaps between business and running, having a growth mindset, being a professional friend maker, social media growth and how he's been able to grow his social media following, how he's been able to simplify his coaching business, creating content that actually works, a rapid fire question round, what it means to go pro, and so much more. One last thing, if you're a health or fitness professional and you're having difficulties getting leads, one of the most common reasons that I see this is not having a well-defined niche. If you go to the link in the description, I have a free 3-step process that walks you through exactly how to get clarity on which niche is best suited for you and your business. Without further ado, let's go. Well, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited to do this. And so where I want to start is that you have what I would say is one of the longest running streaks of being a runner that I've seen from most anyone. You like literally have been running your entire life. And I would really love to open this conversation up with honestly the question of why. Because clearly you've been doing this your entire life. And I think the surface level answer to something like that would be like, I love it. It's fun. I grew up doing it. But like, let's get a little bit more honest with that question. Like, what is it about running that is so deep rooted in your history?
So I've been running ever since I was the earliest memory that I have is from middle school. I just wanted to go out for the track team. But the reason why I run is because I suck at every other sport. That's like the honest answer. And so I tried basketball. My only 2 points were on my own goal because I got too excited when I got the ball. Tried baseball, flung the bat into my own dugout almost every single chance that I got.
Just because you're frustrated?
No, I didn't know how to freaking swing a bat.
Oh, that bad. Okay.
Like I was horrible. Anything coordination wise up here, it was not good. Okay. And then soccer I was really decent at because it was all down below, but I still couldn't figure out how to shoot, dribble the ball, all that good stuff. I was just fast, and I could I played defense. But yeah, I started running in middle school actually when I wanted to get better at running, better at soccer. Excuse me. So I started running to get better at soccer, and from there it just took off. I just had a natural talent for it, and I just was willing to work harder at than anybody else, so just stuck with it.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said that we gravitate towards the things we're good at, right?
Yep.
We'd really, as basic as that statement sounds, is like, yeah, we don't like the things that we suck at.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense that you just continued down that journey. Was there, in the early days of it, were there any growing pains to like learning how to become a better runner? Or was it just like always natural for you?
It was, I didn't start off at the best. I got to being the best at my high school, but my high school wasn't that great. And from there to get to that next level, it took a lot of work. But the thing that I was willing to do was just show up and listen to my coach. That was it. I got a private coach when I was a sophomore in high school. And he literally just said, hey, you need to run when I tell you to run. You need to shit when I tell you to shit. You need to wipe when I tell you to wipe. He was a very crude man, but like he got me there. And like he just said, follow whatever I tell you, you'll be fine. And there were so many guys that were working with him who were well above me. And then in the span of like a year, I'd caught and beaten all of them. And they were like, what the heck happened? And they just said, he just goes to work and doesn't complain. He does all the little things.
I feel like the carryover that I've found, because I've only been running for a couple of years now, between being a runner and business has been almost humorous to me. Like literally actually today, before this conversation, I was planning on doing a 6-mile run. And at about mile 3, I started to get really sharp knee pain, something I'd never had before. Very unique, right under the patella. Literally to the point where like I stopped because I was concerned. Like it felt like a needle underneath my kneecap. And then I walked for a little bit, walked it off. And then after I kind of just like shook my knee a little bit, kept walking, eventually it started to go away and I started running again. And I was able to finish my 6 miles. Yeah. And the reason that I feel like that's been such a carryover for me between just like running and business is because I feel like so much of business as well is just riding the waves, which is like so much of what running feels like, is that there's rarely a time where I go and run and it goes according to plan. Yeah. It's like you just kind of stumble through it and work through the aches and pains and work through the moments where your brain's like, this is fucking dumb. Like, why am I doing this? Nothing is working. But you just keep going. And eventually you find that like you make progress throughout that journey.
Yeah, and that's really what running and business is like, right? When you run, because it's such a repetitive sport, you have to push yourself and challenge yourself just enough to where you see some type of gain or you learn a lesson but don't get hurt. And I think that's the same in business, where you push yourself enough to take a risk to where it's not going to like bankrupt you or something like that. You learn from the mistake or the goal that you hit, and then you advance from there. But that's a lot of it. It's just working hard enough to where you don't, just screw yourself over and you can keep moving.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the lame analogy is like, if you can't run, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl, et cetera, et cetera. Like that is partly running, but that is also partly business as well. Yeah, is like stumbling along as you go. Yep. So with that in mind, in terms of some of the stumbling lessons for you, you started out in financial advising. Yeah, was the first entrepreneurship career business. Yeah. What were the early days like that? And I'm sure you probably learned a lot about sales, if I had to guess.
Man, it was horrible. so if I could paint a picture for you, right? I came out of college like $130. Wet, right? Just, couldn't grow peach fuzz to save my life. And, I had a terrible stutter, and you'll notice that like I look down a lot, and it's just from my early days of like, I still for this day can't look at someone and then think about what I'm going to say at the same time. I am very, very thoughtful with it just because that's how I grew up with, that's how I grew up in the business. As I had a terrible stutter, I had to really think about what I need to say. I had to practice everything. And so I had two options. I could suffer through this for a long time and just kind of, mope about and just kind of do some stuff here and there and just, figure it out eventually. Or I could just suffer a ton immediately. And that's what I did. So I chose to learn, cold prospecting, cold calling, like cold emailing, cold texting, cold Facebook messaging, everything. And I chose to compress a 2-year time frame into about 6 months. Damn. And I practiced everything. When I was running, I was always listening to a podcast to get myself better, a talk to practice how they spoke. And I just kept, day in and day out. And eventually I just learned how to not stutter, how to take my time. The old Barack Obama where he takes a long deep pause and thinks about what he has to say. Like that was a game changer for me. And so it was tough at the beginning, and I had to really learn how to present myself. And I was a young punk kid who didn't have any money to his name, had a ton of college debt, and was trying to help people with their finances, people who were twice my age. And I had the knowledge, I didn't have the confidence. Totally. And so that took a long time for me to really understand. And, thankfully my mentor at the time, he was just like, look, you're going to look the same now until you're about 30. So don't worry about it. Just go in there with confidence. You have me as your backup, and you'll be all right.
No fake mustache or nothing.
No, I couldn't even grow one if I tried. I couldn't even buy one if I tried.
So do you have a chip on your shoulder? And the reason I ask this is because you both, based on both those stories you just told me, like there seems to be a degree of tenacity with you, of willing to put in the work, whether it's through running or learning how to speak or learning how to do sales. And to be able to compress 2 years into 6 months shows a certain level of tenacity. And it reminds me, honestly, a lot of a book I just finished, Will Smith's book called Will. And he's one of those people. I mean, he's been quoted as saying, like, if you and I get on a treadmill, whether you're getting off or I'm going to die. Yeah. And I feel that in you a little bit.
I wouldn't say that I'm that aggressive with it. But, I always go back to this time in college, and it's been a big motivator and possibly the biggest limiter in life is, after my freshman year, I had an amazing time in college and ran really well, right? I ran for the University of Texas here in Austin. And my sophomore year, I struggled a lot because I upped everything, up running up school, and I just couldn't handle it. And so my coach brought me into the office, and he basically told me, like, hey, you're going to be really good one day. And I loved that, hearing that. But then the next phrase was, but I don't know when. And that was a very high point in my life in terms of praise, because I had always wanted that from my peers and some of my family and things like that. But at the same time, he was like, look, you're going to be good. I just don't know how to get you there. And that was always, there was another guy on the team who was in my same grade, who was, the golden child, poster child, great buddy of mine. But like, I always was second fiddle. And, it was always that. It was like, you're going to be good one day, but I just don't know when. And so I always wanted to, that there made me take ownership into my own training, into my own life, into my own destiny, and really want to just do it for myself.
Do you feel like you're still chasing that? Do you feel like you're trying to live up to that still?
Always. And I think that I strive out of being uncomfortable, but when I'm comfortable, I get very comfortable. And so I always try to make sure I'm chasing something new or expanding or taking a risk here or there, because otherwise I can be lazy all day, play video games, watch Netflix, and not do a damn thing. I'll be happy. I'm super content with that. But, I always want to push myself to do something. So I always have a goal that I set up and something that I want to chase after. But that's been a big indicator.
I feel like that's been a common thread of a lot of the conversations that I had. And that was why I asked that question is I feel like most of the entrepreneurs or business owners, they do have a chip on their shoulder. And more often than not, it's like a coach or a father or a mother or somebody that like called them some name when they're in high school, or some ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend that broke up with them and now they're trying to like prove them wrong. Like there always seems to be this emotional carrier. Like for me, it's my father's approval in a lot of ways. I do a lot of the things is like just to get approval from my father, which sounds messed up, but I think a lot of us have that in a lot of ways. And so it's interesting that it seems like it was a coach at the end of the day that you're trying to live up to.
And I mean, I'll say this, like I had the same thing with my dad as well. And now we have an amazing relationship. It was always, hey, I'm proud of you if you won the race.
Totally.
Right? But if you lost, he was like, man, you'll get him next time. And I was just like, dude, like, and then my mom was always like, you're the best in the world. Like, I love you to death. And that thing I didn't appreciate at the moment, but I do appreciate now.
Same.
And so, but back to the coaching thing, it was the worst thing I could ever hear in my life, but also the most freeing in a way, because I started to frame it as, whenever I really struggled, because there's a difference between telling an athlete in college, like, hey, you have to be good. Like by this time of year, I want you running this time and I want you competing and performing in this way. Right. And so that kind of released all the pressure in terms of a timing standpoint. So I realized that, hey, I know I can be good. And when I was struggling or when I wasn't hitting a goal, I was like, I know I can be good. It's just going to take more time. And so that allowed me to really compartmentalize my losses and look more long-term into my goals.
Are you familiar with the growth mindset and fixed mindset?
A little bit.
Because that's a lot of what it sounds like you're talking about. When I learned just the wording around those concepts, it literally changed my mindset about everything forever.
Yeah.
But it's essentially what you're talking about is that a fixed mindset is the assumption that this is the way I am and this is the way that it'll always be, versus a growth mindset is that like I can learn and improve with time.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you're describing, right? Is like you came to terms with the fact of like, I'm not good enough yet. But I know that I can be eventually, which is really important to know.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Totally.
Exactly.
So, okay, so you learned through painful trial and error how to do sales and how to build confidence to be able to sell some financial advice to people much older than you.
Yep.
What were maybe some of the key takeaways or the key lessons in that time period that you can maybe teach somebody else that they wanted to compress, maybe even something as basic as like sales skills or building confidence in a smaller time frame?
It's all knowledge. I wanted to make sure that I knew more than anybody else. And so when I, eventually I had people at other firms wanting to try and, poach me and reach out to me and try and hire me because I was doing so well, and or because I had all my licenses and all that good stuff, right? And I just really want to be able to walk in the room with people who were, 20 years my senior, who had, hundreds of $1 million in assets, and be able to just talk shop with them and be on their level. That was really important to me. And having that knowledge, they always say, when you're reading a book, your book of your life, right? you don't want to teach, you're on chapter 10, you don't want to talk to people who are on chapter 10. You want to sell to people who are on chapter 8, chapter 7, chapter 6, because you're already where they want to be. And so I just wanted to know more than the people I was in the room with. That was it. And I learned everything that I could possible.
Was it as basic as just like...
It's not super complex. And it really is. I'll tell you this. I was able to learn a lot, and I was able to compress it down and simplify it for the people that I was talking. People who had no financial literacy at all, I was able to simplify it in a way that made them feel heard, made them feel like they were understood.
Where were you learning this? Because if I remember reading your notes correctly, you don't read books.
I don't. I absolutely hate reading books, and that's purely because I have the reading speed of like a 5th grader. And so I'm telling you, man, like my wife and I'll be reading something online, and I'll get to like the first 2 sentences, and she'll be done with it because I have to like read it, think about it, process it, et cetera, et cetera.
Dude, audiobooks. You never done audiobooks?
I can't even send audiobooks because it's so long that I can't sit through a 6-hour book. So what I've done is podcasts and talks. So I learned how to speak through motivational talks. And so speak through motivational talks and then podcasts, because everybody who has a book, everybody who's worth their salt, they'll be on a podcast.
Yeah, they do a podcast tour.
And when they do a podcast tour, they give all of their main points of their books out. And I can get that in an hour, which is basically like keynotes, versus having to listen to a whole damn book and get 1 or 2 things out of it.
I will say this though, the one thing I do like, because I admittedly don't actually quote unquote read a lot of books either.
Yeah.
I do like audiobooks. I will say this though, the one advantage that I have found over audiobooks versus podcasts is that an audiobook is very crystallized thinking.
Yeah.
So the ideas are obviously very well thought out and processed, versus a podcast is a little bit more like riffing in the moment, which is fine, which is definitely more entertaining, especially if like it's hard to get through a full book. But I will say that is the one thing I like about books, is like the crystallization.
Yeah. And I will say this, I do have a unique learned skill to really take away key points from podcasts and from like short talks. So I've gotten really good at finding out the key moments and then extrapolating them to what I need. You know what I mean? So I listen to a lot of YouTubers, and like this guy Chris Do is one of my favorite.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, The Future.
For sure.
And he talks about graphic design, like graphic design, artist studios, whatever you want to talk about. But I can take a lot of his lessons and talks and teachings and apply them to my service-based coaching business.
I'm surprised you listen to Chris Do. I love Chris Do because I do websites and marketing and design.
Yeah. And I don't know anything about websites, marketing, and design. But there are so many amazing things about. I mean, you listen to stuff about how to price for clients, and he's talking about pricing for a brand versus a brand identity versus like a simple logo. But I can take that, and he just did a video the other day about what's it called, high level versus low level questions. And how and why you can charge more for the same thing than someone else. And it really is, he said, low-level questions were basically intake form. Hey, when did you start your business? When did you, what kind of design do you need? What kind of stuff like this, like basic stuff.
Totally.
But the high-level questions are the ones where it elicits a conversation. And so he said that if you can do that, you can talk about brand identity, you can talk about, and I'm going to butcher a lot of what he said, but you can talk about all these other things that will garner more attention and more confidence in what you know, and also just build more of a relationship up. You can charge more for that because you're diving in deeper. And so like little things like that I can take and I can extrapolate that into my own business, my own, sales or whatever the case may be.
Admittedly so, just to give people context, Chris Do is more talking obviously to like creators and designers, but what he talks about at the end of the day is more often than not like sales,
business,
personal branding.
Yep,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's follow this journey a little bit then. So did the financial advice thing. When did you eventually make that tip from no longer doing that to starting the coaching business?
So I had a coach at the time. It's funny. It's always about coaches, right? I had a coach at the time. And
have you always had a coach? Side note?
No. So not ever since whenever I started my coaching business, I started coaching myself.
Got it.
And so I had a coach at the time who's an amazing guy. Nothing against him, but I was just struggling. I wasn't improving. And I was actually going back about, I ran a half marathon before him and after I'd worked with him for about a year, and I ran like 3 minutes slower. And so I was putting a lot of effort into it. And so he had a big coaching business that was building up, and I wanted to help him out with that. And I said, hey, I would love to help you out and just coach, right? I just wanted to be a coach. I think it'd be fun because I love helping people improve in running. It's what I love doing. And he didn't really give me the time of day. And so I took that as my sign to start my own coaching business. And I was like, look, like if I'm not going to be, it's always like hey, you're too young. Hey, you're not experienced enough. Hey, you don't know enough. Hey, you're brand new to this. Like what can you offer? And so I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. And so we started 2 years ago, probably, I think it's like April or May. It's our 2-year anniversary of Vertis coaching. And since then we've worked with over 270 plus athletes. We have 168 PRs, and we've done really well. And so it was all out of someone not giving me an opportunity because they thought I wasn't good enough.
I love your mentality on that stuff, man. Like, you just have this tenacity to prove people wrong, obviously. Do you remember your first client, your first coaching client?
Yeah, he is still my client to this day, and he is the only. I've raised prices since then because of demand and my ability and skills and all that stuff, right? But he is the only guy, PJ Thompson, and he won't let me tell him. He's got a run club in here, 5 Run 2. I don't know if you've heard of that, but he's got a big run group in Austin, and he was my first guy. And I posted one like silly like carousel style post that I didn't even put much attention to. And he reached out like that night. And he said, hey, I want you to coach me.
Wow.
And I was just like, dude, like, I'm just starting this. I have not worked with anybody remotely. I'm usually doing this like semi in person for some high schoolers. And so like, he was like, that's fine. And he just trusted me. And 8 months later, he had a 40-minute PR in his marathon.
Love it.
And it was like his 10th one, beautiful day at CIM. And it was an amazing result. And he had struggled for a long time to do that. So he's my first athlete, and he's still my first athlete. And to this day, like he will always have my cheapest price point. He will always have all my attention, as much as he needs, right? Just because like I really appreciated him believing in me, even when I didn't even believe in myself.
Love that. This might seem like an interesting question, but I think it might be helpful for some of the audience. I don't like black and white questions, but I would love to ask: do you think you need to be an extrovert to be a coach?
No, I am a introvert that learned how to talk to people. And so it's funny because when I was in financial services, I would call myself a professional friend maker. And that's literally what I could do. I could walk into any kind of store, any kind of environment, and I could make friends with people because I was really good at listening. And so the weird thing about me is that I lack a lot of empathy for people. So I don't really care much about emotions. And but I've almost learned that skill on how to really just dive into people and care about them and understand them more. So it sounds weird to say, but it sounds like robotic almost, but that's what I had to do. Because, if someone's suffering or struggling, I'm like, look, like just pick yourself up and just get after it. Like that's what I would do.
Dude, okay. We're like the same human. I was just on a walk with my girlfriend the other day, and I often make the joke, sort of joking, sort of not joking, but sometimes I do feel like a robot. Like I have emotions, but more often than not, it's like, I don't know. There is a certain degree of personality type where I'm just very good, I guess, at setting my emotions to the side. It's not that I don't have them. It's just like I'm good at just setting them over there and like doing what I need to do. Mm-hmm. And I was on a walk with my girlfriend the other day, and we were talking about this. And I was like, because we were talking about movies. And I was like, I've never really gravitated towards movies. I've always actually gravitated towards video games. Yeah. And we started talking about like, why is that, right? And it got very interesting to me. And she was basically explaining that she's very empathetic. Yeah. And so when she watches a movie, she feels what the characters feel. And I'm like, oh no, I don't get that at all. Like I'm complexed by the storyline maybe, but I don't feel what they're feeling. Like I don't have that. That doesn't happen for me, which is why I've always like gravitated towards video games, because that feels like I'm like doing something. It's intellectually compelling. Yeah. It keeps me engaged versus a movie. I'm just like boring because I'm not involved in it emotionally. Right. And I was like, that makes so much fucking sense. Like I never thought about it until we had that conversation. But so I could totally relate, man. I struggle with the same thing. Yeah. But moving forward here then. So coaching business, started it, got your first clients. How did you continue to grow and scale from there then?
All social media. So I actually started the coaching business in part because of that, the other coach, but mainly to learn social media content creation, because it's so hard to do in the financial space. There's so many rules and regulations and et cetera, et cetera. But I really want, and it's so much more fun to do for me. So I'd actually met Matt Choi when he was at like 20,000 followers at the Austin High Track, at a local track down here.
Matt Choi was?
Yeah.
He's at like 300 now.
I know. I met him when he was like, quote unquote, like a nobody or whatever. And I knew who he was, and I kind of played coy, that professional friend maker or whatever, and just kind of curious about what he did and all that good stuff. And so I just kind of hung out with him, and I said, hey, I will give you some of my, running ideas in terms of content, because I had a lot of good ideas, and you teach me how to make the content. And so we collaborated on some of the videos. If you look back at them, some of them have like 1 million views and stuff like that, because not a lot of people were talking about it at the time. And so that's been a lot of fun. And he's a good friend to this day, but he kind of helped me just jump off the deep end. And it was just me shadowing him for a little bit and just seeing how he did things, who he hired, all the angles, because I could pick up stuff pretty quickly if I just put my time and attention into it. I knew I could do it. I just needed someone to show me, or at least just to follow them. And so that was we would just kind of hang out, talk after runs and stuff like that. And I was getting nervous about it. And he was just like, look, just do it. Who cares? And so I started this challenge called 90 Reels in 90 Days, where a lot of people have done this, as well. But I saw somebody do it. I wanted to do it. I was like, hey, I want to challenge myself to make, 90 educational running reels in 90 days. And I failed 3 times to do it because I'm a perfectionist. So I just restarted over again. But that ended up with about, 150 some odd videos. And from there, no cold DMs, no Instagram ads, no nothing. It was everyone who has reached out for coaching has literally DM'd me or filled out an application that I've sent.
Do you feel like the game of content has changed from when you started to what it is now?
I think that it depends on what type of content you're talking about. If you're talking about growing a business, I think there are a lot of people who dramatically, they don't know what they're doing. And by that, I mean, they have a ton of followers, but they don't have a lot of reach or engagement from their audience. And so I follow the Alex Hormozi principle, which is you give away everything for free. And eventually someone is going to come to you and say, hey, if this is your free stuff, what can I pay for? And that's pretty much it. I gave and gave and gave and gave and didn't, besides that first post that said I was coaching, I didn't say that a single time. And then eventually people just kept asking.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about just putting in the stripes.
Yeah.
It's something I've been thinking a lot about lately even from somebody who does web design, I've been doing this for a long time now, there's regular occurrences where I'll literally just build a landing page for somebody just because 1, it continues to build up my skill set, but for 2, it's this shows you what I can do.
Yeah.
And then somewhere down the road, it always circles back anyways.
Yep. So
there's so much to be said about that statement. The reason I want to tap on this content thing again one more time, just from the angle of I don't mean to call out my buddy, Matt
good.
Johnson. Do you know Matt Johnson?
I love Matt Johnson.
So
he's a great guy.
Okay, this is why I wanted to bring this up. Yeah. I love him, good buddy of mine. This is not to talk shit about him. But what I have found is that I look at him more as an entertainer than an athlete. I know he brands himself as a runner and an ultra endurance runner and an athlete. But when you look at his content, it's entertaining. It's funny.
Yeah.
It makes you laugh. It's conversations with his mom. It's not really about how to be a better runner or how to run endurance events. He's more of an entertainer than anything. And the reason I bring this example up is because I think it's important from a content standpoint of kind of knowing maybe where your angle is or what makes you unique. Yeah. You obviously posted a lot more educational stuff and showing transformations of people who hit certain PRs. Yep. That's why I bring that up, though, is I think it's important to know of where's your strengths and how can you lean into that? Because he's way more of an entertainer than I think he is an athlete, quote unquote.
So, I mean, there's information, there's entertainment, and then there's something else in terms of content, but I can't remember
Inspiration.
what it is. Inspiration, there we go. Inspiration doesn't really get you much of anything. And entertainment will garner you a lot of followers and a lot of brand deals, which is great. And I think that is, and don't get me wrong, Matt is an amazing athlete. Mm-hmm. He just chooses to do a ton of, really crazy stuff. And that's great.
And it's great. It's funny. This is not talking shit.
But you know what? He's done something extremely well where he's mixed that 10% inspiration with 90% funny and his personality, and he's grown I think 80,000 followers in the last 3 months because of it. And so I think once you find something that works, if you work it well enough, and if that's the kind of business you want to build, go for it. But in terms of what my strengths are, I know that I'm very deadpan. And I know that I'm not extremely funny and I really have to force it. So I focus on, there are people who make educational running content all day long. I make in-depth and explain very complex running topics into 60 to 90 second reels. That's what I do exceptionally well. And I know that because I have so much more experience and so much more just knowledge to tap into, and I also know how to condense stuff just from a sales perspective and a talking perspective. And so that's my strength. And so it depends on what business you want to build, honestly. Totally. If you want to build a podcasting business, you got to work on your podcasting skills and then figure out how to get to more people to get to the podcast.
Totally.
If I want to work on, if Matt Johnson wants to be the personality, or Matt Choi wants to be the personality, He made a big jump. I saw Matt's big jump, Matt Choi, whenever he started, less of the running educational stuff and more about the experience. And then he started exploding, because that's him. He is energy in a nutshell.
Yes, he is.
Right. And the same with Matt too. Like it's amazing at what he does, and when he turns it on, all that good stuff. And I love him to death, but I can't do that. And I fully understand that. And so I chose to just really, really focus on education and really make that better than anybody else, to explain extremely complex topics at a 5th, 6th, 7th grade level and really reach a bigger audience.
I wouldn't call you a deadpan. You're a little bit entertaining, but
I have to really try. Right?
I do like the self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's just so important. I mean, like, really, at the end of the day, the cliche statement is authenticity, but so much of authenticity is really understanding yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, it's hard. It's not easy to really know where you, because again, I can too be the entertaining person, but it's not my natural. It's not what I gravitate towards. I'm way more interested in just like ideas and intellectual things. And so like, if I just do that, that's very easy and natural for me versus trying to be a personality, which I can be, but it's not fun for me.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the overlap between training for something like qualifying for the Olympic trials, and maybe what are some of the things you've been able to carry over into regular life that you've like learned from that experience, whether it's like business or personal? Yeah.
So as a background, I qualified in 2016 for the Olympic trials in the half marathon, fresh out of college. And
which is what time for the record for a half marathon?
So back then, I ran 104.45 for my first half marathon out of college, which is basically about 4:57, 4:56 pace per mile.
Damn it.
And I know you're close, right?
Yeah, super. It's insane.
And back then, the time to qualify, I think, was like 2:20 for the marathon, but you could qualify in the half, and it was much more achievable. This is back before super shoes and everything else. But I didn't run the trials because I got hurt, and I think I forgot to sign up or something like that. But like I couldn't go anyway. Like I wasn't gonna be able to run. But I learned there quickly that running was not going to make me $100,000 a year. And so I decided to focus on business. So I took some time off, and I wrestled with that for a long time of, man, I have to spend 30, 40 hours a week training, or I have to spend 34 hours a week working, or even more. Right. And I had seasons where I would want to run, or seasons where I work on the business. And I couldn't work both at the same time. And so it took me a long time to just figure out, once I built up enough skill set, and once I got to a place where I could actually support myself, that I could do both. And so training for the Olympic trials really taught me how to think about the long term, and not like, if I wouldn't have been, man, I got to be fast this year. I got to do this. I got to bust my butt. I got to do the biggest thing in the world this year, or in 3 months, or in whatever the case may be. If I would just say, hey, I just got to be consistent for 2, consistent for 3, that would have led to significantly better results. And I'd be maybe a 2:16, 2:14, 2:12 marathoner without even thinking about it.
I love the focus, man. Like, that's so hard. The quote often is like, you can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah.
Especially not all at once.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you overestimate what you can do in a year and underestimate what you can do in 5.
Totally.
That's the business version of it. Right. And so I just did that in I want to do things in 3 months and not a year.
Were you able then to focus on growing the business to where you wanted to be, and then just like stepping back from the running a little bit? And then once the business was running as it needed to, get back into the running?
It wasn't until I started the coaching business, because honestly, that lent well into it. It lended into it, because I started creating content, not just about educational stuff, but I started just talking about my workouts. And I would literally have my phone in the middle of, running a 5:30 rep or 5-minute rep, whatever it was, and just talking about how I'm feeling and how I'm struggling and what I'm doing. And I was very real and open about it. And I thought people only wanted to see the highest points, like the trials qualifying, the amazing workouts and all stuff. But I got more business, and I got more of an audience from just being myself and saying, hey, today sucked. I did not hydrate well today. I did not take care of myself well today, but here's what I'm doing to get better at it. So I always talked about what I struggled with, and then I talked about how I'm going to improve. And a lot of people resonated with that, and they reached out and said, hey, I saw how you did this, and I want your mindset in my coaching.
I was actually just thinking about that. I've only just recently learned that lesson where like the knee injury that I had today is more often than not, I would have skipped over that and just been like, cool, look, I ran 6 miles today. I'm amazing. Yeah. But realistically, it's like, that actually wasn't what actually happened. And people don't necessarily relate to that. Actually, one of my best friends called me out on it at one point. He's like, dude, I don't want to see the highlights. He's like, I want to see you falling on your ass when you're doing a squat or whatever it is, like tripping down the street. And I'm like, okay, I think I understand how this social media thing works now. Like they want a real version, not like the highlight reel of who you think you are.
And honestly, like if you're killing it, that's great. I think what people don't want is just saying, hey, I'm doing amazing, just like, praise me. But what I really learned how to do well is saying, hey, I'm doing really well and I want to help you do well. You know what I mean? And so rising tide lifts all ships, and I just wanted to be that rising tide.
So you're at 100 some clients now or something like that?
We have 100, and between myself and my assistant coaches, we have 150, 160 some odd athletes that we work with. How does one manage that many clients, especially as somebody who's an introvert? I mean, how are you managing that many people? So I love Alex Ramosi, and he said that don't automate what you can systematize, especially in a service-based business where people break that down. Don't automatize what you can systematize. Don't automate what you can systematize.
What does that mean?
So if I could build, so instead of automating I reach out to my athletes 2-3 times a week. Like I talk to everyone pretty frequently, and then all my other coaches, stuff like that. I know I have to make time for it, and I know that. So I have a full Google sheet. Everything's run through Google Sheets, and I have a full Google sheet of like, hey, if I talk to you for this day, I check off a box, and so everything is in a system. And so system with how I communicate with people, how long it's going to take me, how to respond. If there's a new athlete, how to onboard them. There's a system in order to do that. So instead of a bot sending out something, it's a simple thing that I can copy and paste and then personalize. And so that saves me a ton of time. And the other thing that I really did is I duplicated myself extremely well. And that's what I learned in the financial services world. Because my mentor at the time, he had been struggling to coach all these people that he was hiring, and his mentor told him, like, just make videos. And so I have a plethora of content, full strength training routines, everything, to where if someone has a question, they can go and look it up, and I don't have to answer, when do I change out my shoes? Or, how do I program my watch? I can really just say, I can just show them a video and say, here's everything you need to know, and I answer any questions in between, but I can focus on the main coaching aspect, which is, hey, you did this workout well, this is what we need to improve on, this is what et cetera, et cetera.
How many clients do you personally coach?
110 to 100, 100 to 120 is what I kind of average.
Oh my God.
But again, it only takes me about 20 to 25 hours a week to manage that.
Really?
And
communication is via what?
Just text.
Okay.
And if I need to hop on a call, I'll hop on a call with them. So in terms of, I don't do weekly calls. I don't do monthly calls. Maybe for my very top end, I have a couple clients who are very, very high end clients of mine, and they pay me well for it, right? But for everybody else, because I check in so frequently, if you're running workout on Tuesday, Thursday, you're doing long run on Saturday, I'm checking in Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And so I know how you're doing. You have a Google sheet that you're putting your information into and all that good stuff. So it's very much a collaborative effort, because I just don't want to be someone who tells you what to do and you just do it blindly. That's not how we get the PRs that we get.
Respect, man. Is the Instagram the only form of content where you're producing content?
That's it. I keep forgetting to post it on YouTube. My wife is in cybersecurity. She's against TikTok, so we don't have TikTok. Because just all the security concerns and everything, you can see stuff like that. So I'm like, that's perfectly fine. But everything's been built off. I don't even have a website, dude. It's all through Instagram and social media.
Do you feel at risk about that at all?
No, because if I know how to, I don't focus on the algorithm when it comes to content. So any platform that I hop on, I know that I can figure out how to reach a good audience, because it's literally just good content. Gary Vee talks about content creation. He's like, it's not a matter of first, it's a matter of better. And so if you can figure out just how to make engaging and good content, and how to integrate the first few seconds to engage them, make sure that you're telling a story throughout, make sure you offer some tips, a CTA. Once you learn those basics, you can replicate it in different medias. You just got to figure out how to do it.
Changing gears a little bit, can you tell us how you proposed to your wife? Speaking of your wife.
I ran a marathon, the Austin Marathon, to propose to my wife.
I know.
And so
tell me more.
I was gonna win that darn thing, but
you didn't win?
No, I'd been dealing. I actually got 10th or something like that. But I've been dealing with a hamstring issue, and I'd already planned for it and everything. I bought the ring, And I was just, you know what, screw it, I'm going to go for it anyway. And I knew the race directors very well. They all helped me out with it. You know, it was a beautiful moment. It was great. I absolutely loved it. And it was completely unexpected. So I was able to hide it pretty well. And we got her to the start line, got her VIP pass and everything, or the finish line, VIP pass and everything else. And so I really appreciate what they did. And it was a lot of fun, man. And it was funny because I had really struggled that day. And there was a guy who was going to do it as well. But he was going to do it at he was going to finish in like 3 hours and like 30 minutes. And I had really struggled that day, and I walked a bunch because my hamstring just pretty much just like broke on me. And so I finished at like 2 hours and 50 minutes, I think, walking the last like 10 miles. And I was trying to do it, hurry up and do it so that he could come across the finish line and do it as well. But I kind of outstaged him and got the press and everything else, which kind of sucked. So I feel bad for it, but at the end of the day, I got a wife out of it, so I can't complain.
I did see the video. It looked great. Although I did wonder, I was like, I wonder how hard it was to get down on one knee with a fucking hamstring injury.
It wasn't fun, but it's all right.
For sure, worth it. I mean, I would say it's worth it.
Yeah. So it was a good day. It was a lot of fun.
So is everything you do revolve around running then? I mean, even proposal. Like, I mean, is there anything you don't do that does, or anything you do that doesn't?
Now it kind of does, honestly. I mean, look, so I to go back to my wife, right? I met her dancing at a club on West 6th Street at like 2:00 in the morning. And that's the last time her and I have ever been to a club.
Nice.
So I met my counterpart introvert. I married her because like she is my opposite. She's the one that doesn't want to run. She wants to run and sit down, eat some pizza, watch Netflix, hang out, go exploring, go traveling, and that's what I was really missing. And so running is not everything, but it's just it seems like it's everything because it's my whole business.
Totally.
But outside of that, it's my wife and my 4 cats. That's honestly like those are the biggest parts of my life.
We got 2. 4 seems like a lot to me, but
yeah. Well, we had 3. One of them unfortunately passed away, and then my wife wanted twins. So we got 2 more, and I love them to death. They're a handful, but it's a lot of fun.
So seems like this might be a weird question, but if you weren't running, or your world wasn't revolved around running, what would you do? Like, what are the other areas of interest in your life?
I would just want to build a massive business in something, some kind of sales, some kind of organization, some kind of
team-oriented
product or
by
service.
yourself?
Yeah, team-oriented.
Okay.
Because I love the idea of pushing people up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I love the idea of bringing people along with me for the ride.
Totally.
And so I know how to make money. I know how to make really good money. But I love the idea of taking someone who hasn't done anything in that world and teaching them, a way to really change their lives.
So what's next for your coaching business then? What does that
That's
look like?
what I'm trying to figure out. So I can go the route of hiring 10 more coaches and maybe doing like a Vertis coaching certification type thing where like we teach people how to get, how to coach the way we coach. Because we get PRs in a fraction of the time. Like I think I looked at our data, and our average training time is 4.3 months. And the average PR in that time frame for the marathon is 16 minutes and 45 seconds. And the average half marathon time is 8 minutes and 12 seconds.
Wow.
So in 4 months, we can get someone a significant PR. That's the average for all 168 of our athletes that have PR'd, and the other 100 we're working with. And so, but if I want to expand in that area, that's great. But the other thing I really want to tackle is the like done for you coaching plan. Like the one you buy online that everyone says is like, worthless. I want to really revamp that because I know I can do that well and start to, again, systematize that with videos and really, kind of guide you through it almost like a course. If I can do that for running plan, like a sub 3 or sub 4, 5-minute mile, whatever the case may be, I think that'll do really well.
I think you can. And just to give advice, something that I learned recently was basically taking the Ivy League approach to something like that.
What do you mean?
So essentially, don't let everybody in. So Ivy League colleges very specifically are exclusive, and they only let certain people into the colleges, and they make sure that you get very clear results because they vet who is allowed into the program. Yeah. I think the best courses now that I've seen do the same thing. I actually just recently joined one that did have some form of vetting process. It wasn't like, if you have the cash, you can buy this course, we'll let you in. It's like, no, we want to make sure you're the right fit for this program to guarantee that you get, or I shouldn't say guarantee, to make it highly likely that you get the results that you desire. And I think that now is the best way to make a course, just
So
as advice.
It's interesting, right? Because I thought about doing that. That was the first advice I got for coaching, was like, find the muscly 25-year-old guys who want to run a sub 3 hour marathon, who never ran before a day in their life, and just get them there, because it's the easiest wins you're going to get. But what I've really gravitated towards were the challenges. So we had a gal who lost 75 pounds and wanted to run her first marathon, but couldn't for the life run more than 3 miles or finish in the time allotted. And 8 months later, she completed her first marathon walking, jogging, 45 seconds on, 45 seconds off for the entire way at very specific paces. Or the people who have been completely injured or for years and are now, have been stagnant for 5-10 years, and they're PRing in their marathon for the first time in forever. I firmly believe that the quality of coaching that I do and the time that I put into it for people can work for anybody. I'm working with people who are doing, high rocks and who want to run, and people who are in the Marines who are working, 12-hour shifts as nurses, people with 4 kids as single parents, and they don't have time. I've helped all of them hit massive results in a very short period of time because we pay so much attention. And I really want that extra challenge to make a plan that anybody can use over time. And have enough resources in there to where they can get to that.
Well, fuck, man, if you can do it, that would
I know
be...
it's a big risk, but also a obviously like an amazing reward. So that's my goal. It's like, it's a stretch goal, right?
Yeah,
but
for sure.
It's something I definitely want to try.
Yes and no. I mean, I guess it depends on the realm, because like the first thing that came to mind when you're talking about that is Ray Dalio's. No, was it Ray Dalio? I think it was Ray Dalio. His all-weather portfolio. Are you familiar with? Mm-mm. A financial guy doesn't know this. Essentially, so he basically put together a portfolio that no matter what was happening in the economy, whether we were in a bear market or what's the other market?
Bull market.
Bull market. Thank you. Regardless of like what was happening with the market, that it would almost always, no matter what, continue to tick upwards over a long enough time frame.
Yeah.
And so like it was just like he figured out the perfect diversification of like how to diversify stocks and bonds in what country and et cetera, et cetera. That was like he would hand this to his children and be like, use this portfolio and you're basically guaranteed to be rich within whatever 30 years.
Yeah.
Same concept, right? Is like you're looking for something that can like kind of be the catch-all for regardless of what you're dealing with. Like this program can get you to where you want to be, generally speaking, in a long enough time frame.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, right, from the finance perspective, it's a lot simpler than even that. I mean, you look at the stock market; it's averaged 10.3% since the 1930s when it first founded, 20s, whatever, when it first founded, and so like you just leave it in long enough and you don't get scared. Everyone's trying to nowadays arbitrage and do all these other things, but realistic, like you might not make billions of dollars, but you can make millions of dollars, which is more than most people will ever need if you just be consistent, start early, and pick stocks that are semi-diversified. It's super simple. Any mutual fund you go to, this is kind of getting into financial advice, but any mutual fund you go to, it's not financial advice. It's not, because I'm not your financial advisor. I have to say that, but like you go to a portfolio, you make sure it's been around for at least 10, 20, 30 years, and make sure it's gone through all the worst parts, 2008, 2020, stuff like that. And if it survived the next year, you're fine.
Yeah.
That's it. It's super simple, man. It's just people don't, like all the stuff for running is online. All the stuff for business is online. It's just you need to learn how to cut through all the bullshit and get to the good stuff. And that's what we really specialize in. It's just compressing all the things that you really need to know into one spot.
But that's not fun and sexy, Mark.
It's not. It's absolutely not.
It's boring as shit, Mark. Exactly. I want to move my stuff around and put stuff into crypto. Okay, Mark? Get out of here.
If you want all that stress, man, you're more than welcome to do it. And if you make money on it, all the better. I tried investing in crypto for a little while, and like I made a good 1,000% return, but a very small amount of money, right? So I turned like $500 into whatever. And then I like did it again, and like I lost a ton of it. Yeah. So like it's just like it is what it is.
I don't fuck with any of that, dude. I don't.
Yeah. Not me anymore.
I take the Warren Buffett approach, where you just like I just set it in there, and I'm like,
set it and forget it.
Didn't even know it existed. Let's talk masterclass here. So we have a few topics that we can tap into.
Cool.
You obviously have a diverse bit of skill sets, from sales, content, being able to focus on things, general communication, especially as an introvert. Is there a topic that you feel most confident maybe talking about here for a moment?
Man, I mean, just throw me whatever you want to talk about. I'm good.
So I'd love to tap into then of like just the idea of simplifying things, because that's something I've been most interested in lately, and I think a lot of people have been interested in that concept, because I agree, it feels like a lot of noise. It feels like we're always challenged with like, how do I cut through all the other coaches or all the other content or all the other courses or like all the other businesses. And a quote that always has resonated with me is the ultimate sophistication is simplification. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. And so in terms of like your, both from a business standpoint and I guess even from like a coaching standpoint, how have you been able to simplify things?
It's a lot of, it is significantly harder to simplify stuff than it is to make the most complex, TED talk that you can. Right? And so it takes a lot of work. So basically what I do in coaching and in business is I started out with the biggest things I focus on is I improve a little bit every time I do something. So every year I reiterate my coaching plan, the Google Sheet I use, and I make it a little bit better. I make it a little more streamlined. I learn from it. I ask my athletes, I talk to, my clients and see what they like, see what they didn't like, all that good stuff. So that's the first thing that I do. In terms of a content side, I will, in terms of a business side, from a admin point of view, I'll make every data point that I need, and then I'll look back at it in like a month or two and be like, why am I looking at this data point? I don't need to track this. And then I back it off. So I will, and the same thing with my content, right? So if you look at my raw edits, they're like 15 minutes long for like a 1.5-minute video. And a lot of it's like ums and ahs and rephrasing and stuff like that. But it's really like 5 minutes of video of content and ideas into one video that I have to trim down. So I have to force myself. That's why I love short form content. I have to force myself to really whittle that down little by little. So I'll take a lot of the ums, the ahs, obviously. I'll take a lot of the contractions out. So that's the first thing that I do. I kind of simplify the language. So instead of saying, what's it called? He is now doing this. I'm saying he's doing, or he's running, or whatever the case may be, right? I'll try to simplify stuff like that first. And then from there, I'll go into more complex topics, make sure that everything is crystal clear. I'm not talking about, lactate threshold, when I can just say, hey, when your muscles get tired. So I'll simplify that next. And then from there, I'll always time myself after I do a revision, and I'll say, hey, this is 1:40 long. I need to get it to 1:30. And then from that point on, I will cut out all the stuff. Like I'll say something about, you need to roll out at this much time, and then you need to roll out every day. And I can just kind of combine the two, or I can cut one out. So I'll just kind of see where I'm reiterating the same point over and over again. And so I'll do that as well. And then over time, that kind of just brings it down to its bare form, to where it's the easiest to understand, but offers so much advice. And so that's what I'm really good about, is condensing so much advice very simply into a very short form. And that's what I like to do for all my coaching. It seems very complex, but once you get it, it's very simple. I always say simple but not easy. It's simple. It's simple in terms of the time that the video is, what's it called, how it sounds, and everything else. But it's not easy to get there. Totally. And so I think it's just people just have to do a lot of revisions. People don't understand that. Totally
Agree, man. And even from like a content standpoint too, I'd say more often than not, the way I try to think about it is I'm trying to talk to a beginner. Yeah. Is that I think we often, it's hard though too. Like I'll be the first to admit that it's hard to, especially somebody that has no emotions like myself, it's like it's hard to relate back to what I used to think or what I used to feel like when I didn't know anything about a specific topic that I'm trying to teach on. But that is like the majority, in my opinion, of social media, is like I'm thinking about like, who is the person that knows nothing about this? And oftentimes it's like not really new information. It's often just like reminding people of something they already knew that they probably forgot, like the basic level stuff. But that's usually what I'm thinking about from a content standpoint.
But that's interesting, because that type of content doesn't do well anymore because it's so saturated. So I did a video on the 80-20 rule of running. I'm sure you know what that is: 80% hard, 20%, or 80% easy, 20% hard, right? And so the video got like 25,000 views. Like it was a solid video compared to my following and whatnot. But I made about $10,000 to $12,000 from that video in terms of clients. And everybody that reached out to me, they said, hey, I saw your video on the 80-20 rule. And they said, I've heard so many running influencers make content about that, but not adequately explain what it's used for. And so everybody can tell you, run slow to run faster, what's it called, etc. Drink water every day and like roll out a stretch every day, but like to offer applicable advice And to do that in such a clear and concise way is where most people fall apart. And most of these influencers who have businesses, they have a fraction of the clients that I have, and I have a fraction of the following they have. And it's solely because I learned how to, my content doesn't get a lot of views, but it builds my business. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to create content to have followers. I wanted to create content to nurture my business. And I think those are two very different things. Totally. Anybody can create those beginner content, but I think to really break through the noise that you're saying, to cut through it, you have to learn how to take that one step further. Because there are 3 layers of people you're going to reach with your content. The first one is going to be that experienced guy or gal who's going to take it and say, I can work with this. I know what I'm doing. And they're never going to work with you. And then you have that second person who's like, they're kind of experienced and like, I think I can do this. And they might try and fail, and they might work with you like 6 to 8 months later. I've had plenty of people that have reached out to me and told me that. And there's that person who is that beginner level who's like, man, there are so many coaching options out there. So many people who are saying the same thing, but you said it in a way that I resonate with. You said it in a way that is really applicable, that I can take into it. You gave me so much more information. I want to work with you. And I have all 3 of those people now that want to work with me, because I speak at such a high level that reaches all three of those types of people. The people who think they don't need me, but they realize that they do, who are elite athletes, and the people who are elite in their space, right? The people who think they know what they're doing, they eventually come back to me, or sometimes they just reach out automatically. They say, hey, I know you know more, and I want to work with you. And the people who have never worked with anybody the day in their life, and they just want to get started. I've been able to build content for every rung of the ladder, and I think that if more people can figure that out, especially from the coaching space, they can reach a much broader audience.
What's your favorite and least favorite type of client to work with?
I love working with everybody. That's the beauty of business, right? You get to pick who you work with. So
Totally.
like if I don't like someone, I could just say, oh man, like I don't want to work with. So I haven't really had anybody I don't like to work with, honestly.
I have fired many clients. I don't know about you.
The only client I don't like to work with is the ones that don't pay. I'll tell you that much. but seriously, it's if they're too needy, I appreciate that, because I know so much more about them that I can better coach them and guide them. And I know those people care so much that, like, I talked to the client last night till about like 12 o'clock to like 12 a.m. And he just called. He was just talking about stuff, and it wasn't anything big, but like we need to talk about it. And he wanted to talk about it, and he was just nervous about stuff, and he was killing it. And I was just like, dude, you're good. And I really appreciate that, because I know that he truly cares about what he's doing, and I really care about him and what he's doing, and I'm fully invested in his goal. And so like I know that hour-long conversation at 11 o'clock at night is a nuisance, maybe, but in the long run, I will have nurtured the relationship to where he will work with me for months and years on end. And at the same time, his results will be significantly better because I squashed his fears. I calmed him down before it got bad. And so that way he can take those lessons and implement them. I'm a firm believer that, the clients you really spend time with, if you spend the right amount of time with them and teach them and not just tell them, they'll start to learn how to do it on their own, and then it's less work in the long run. And I think most people forget that working with specific clients.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit for being empathetic. You like people more than I do. I feel like I intentionally try to have as few calls a day as humanly possible. That's just me, though. I got a round of rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
It's whatever the first thing is that comes to mind. What's your best business advice?
Oh man, longevity. I know that I can't compare my year 10 to someone's to my year 2 to someone's year 10.
Spoken like a true runner.
Yep.
What's your best marketing advice?
Man, be yourself and get better.
Good advice. What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
I get to compete with myself. I never get stagnant. If I want to grow, I get to choose to grow.
That's funny. I've not heard that one, and I can definitely relate to that a lot. I don't know if it's a personality type thing, but I'm not super competitive with other people, but I'm really competitive with myself.
Yeah. I stopped playing other people's games, and I started playing my own game, and I realized that I was so much more fulfilled when I was competing against my best.
Totally.
And I also wasn't, dreading the next run or next workout or next, whatever year of business, because I wasn't where that other person was.
Totally. I totally agree, man. When are you the most productive?
In the morning and late at night.
What time do you get up and run? I want to know that question as well.
It depends. I mean, I helped volunteer at a local high school to coach a team, and I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day to go run before they did, and I absolutely hated it. So once I stopped working with them, I now wake up at like 7, 8, or 9, whenever my cats wake me up, pretty much. That's like the only thing that's my alarm clock now. And then I get up and I go through my day.
I have the same dilemma.
Yeah.
Those cats need to be fed every goddamn morning.
Yep.
Who is your inspiration?
I would say my wife.
Good answer.
Yeah, she is. She's the strongest person that I've ever met, and all the stuff that she's been through and all the stuff that we've been through together, I really respect her, and she's been the biggest reason why I've upped my level of work, intentionality, and everything.
Is she in the business with you?
No, but she helps me when she can. But she has a full-time career. It's our business for sure. But I think it's just we battled a lot when we were first started about the business, because she was very much safety minded.
Sure.
And she didn't like the business aspect of things, just like the whatever. And so the lack of the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
The unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And so we fought a lot about that. And basically, I showed her that I could work my butt off, and she learned to trust me in my work. And now we have an amazing relationship.
Yeah, that's kind of an old paradigm. I was actually just talking to a buddy about that. It's like the old paradigm is that it is safer to have a career than it is to have a business. But I would argue that having skills and relationships is far more valuable than having a job.
I know that I can always make money in some way, shape, without I'm just selling water filters, insurance, investments, or coaching.
Totally.
Exactly. I know I can do it whenever I need to, and that's what I really value.
Tell me one secret or something most people don't know about you.
Man, going back to my wife thing, that I do a lot of self-improvement, but the biggest personal development I've ever done was, my wife and I went to couples counseling like 6 months into our relationship, because we were just fighting like cats and dogs, and we weren't fighting with each other, we were just fighting at each other, and we just weren't really listening. And so we went to couples counseling because we really want to make it work, and I fell in love with her hard, very fast. And so that, and then we went to 6 months of marriage counseling before we got married. And this was all in the span of 2, 3 years. And those have been the biggest growth developments that I've had, and that I would highly recommend to anybody. And we didn't have a honeymoon phase. It was all just like, we want to grow, we want to build together. And now we have no issues. We know how to communicate. We know how to, stop a fight, stop an argument, talk to each other, calm down, separate and come back. Like, we have a better relationship than most people ever have, and more communication, understanding than most people ever have. And that has, they always say that if you want to build a business, the best indicator of it is you have less stress at home.
Wow.
And so that's what I really focused on. And that has catapulted my business 5-10x.
Wow.
So she is not a partner in the business, but she is my partner.
That's a profound statement. I mean, I would agree full-heartedly, because I know when things aren't good between my partner and I, is like, yeah, it just does something to your psychology.
Yeah.
It weighs you down. Yeah. It distracts you. Like, you have less energy.
You can't get away from, you can get away from work, but you can't get away from your significant other.
Right.
And that's the tough part.
Wow, that's fast. It's kind of like health too. Like, it's very cliche, but I think there's so much truth in that statement as well. Is like, I'm lucky that I'm very healthy and very fit, and I work out and I eat good. And so that carries over to just like having, generally speaking, more energy to do more things.
Yep.
Which is like, it seems obvious, but like, I don't think people take that seriously enough. Yeah. Like, most people just like neglect their health and don't realize that actually has carryover to fucking everything. Anyways, what would you change about yourself?
I wish I wasn't, I wish I wouldn't get so content. Believe it or not, I'm a huge procrastinator and I get content very, very quickly. So I always have to find something new to challenge myself with. What's the big challenge this year? I want to double the business. So in terms of, like, we had 102 athletes PR last year. I want to get over 200.
Love it.
And then I want to figure out my body in terms of running as well. So I got a couple personal goal and then a business goal, and then we have all our financial goals already met. So, like,
what's the personal goal?
Just to figure out my own running.
In terms of like a time or a race?
In terms of my body's working a little bit weird. So my body has a timing issue. And so basically, like, on my right side, my quads, hips, glute, and back fire at different times. And so it causes my efficiency to go down immensely. So I can push through workouts, I can run 5-minute pace, but it doesn't feel comfortable. And it's been that way for a long time, but it just kind of came to a head that I really need to focus on it now. So I'm just trying to take a step back and rebuilding up to where I know I can be.
The amount of self-awareness you learn from running is like crazy to me. Yeah. As somebody that's only been doing it for a couple of years, the amount of things I've learned about my body on a run is like, oh, that's weird. I didn't realize that's tight, or whatever the fuck it is. What's your favorite app or resource right now?
YouTube, because I can watch
I
everything
guessed
I want to
that.
do that, and then I can learn everything I want to do that. It's a great all-in-one app. Yeah, I love it.
Are you running away from something, or are you running towards something?
Man, I'm always running away from something, and it's like my past. It's my self-doubt. It's my insecurity. It's the things that I've messed up on in my life and stuff like that. And so I think once I'm just starting to get to the point where I'm starting to work towards something, but I still have some unfinished business that I need to figure out.
You have good self-awareness, man. What's your favorite part about Austin? And you can't say the people. And this is a great question for you because you've been here your whole fucking life.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised from like 20 minutes down the road, and I've been coming here. I've been living here the whole time.
Yeah.
Man, the reason why there are three things I love is I'm so close to the city for one, and at the same time I can be on a trail in about 5 minutes, and I love the heat. I absolutely despise the cold. Like it is like slightly the air in here is slightly cold. I am freezing my butt off, and I can't wait to get outside. And so I love the heat, I love the trails, and I love the city, and I love having all of that in one place. And yeah, so that's why I like Austin.
That's why I live here, man.
Yeah.
I fully agree. I'm from Minnesota. I hate the cold as well. I have one last question. Before I ask that question though, I want to acknowledge you, man, for honestly, although you say you're not super empathetic, you clearly love people and you clearly want to help people. And there's clearly a reason that you're coaching. And even when you mentioned the point about setting goals to help more people hit PRs, tells me you obviously care a lot about people. And I just want to acknowledge that, man. Like you're doing awesome things and you're helping a lot of people, and that's cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Last question. It's really whatever your best, or actually before I ask it, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
Dude, Instagram, that's all I got right now.
Yeah.
So I love to promote 5 things, but it's really, Mark Pinales, MarkPinales. Super simple. I'm the only one because it's a family name. So just like look me up and follow me. And if you want some coaching advice, reach out.
Do you have any brothers?
No, 2 sisters.
So you carry the family name.
Pretty much. I think I'm one of the few boys in my family that actually carry on that family name.
Love it, man. I know if I don't carry it on, the name dies with me. But last question. It's really whatever your best piece of advice is. So if you were to go back to the early days of your coaching business, or you were to talk to somebody else that wanted to start a similar business, some sort of coaching business of some form, what's maybe the best piece of advice you would give to them or your previous self?
There are 2 points in your business career or in your fitness career, in your marriage and everything else. There's the point where you start and the point where you get serious. And so I started and I stayed at that start line for a long time, or just like kind of easing past it. But it wasn't until I got serious that I actually saw the growth. And so what I would advise to anybody is if you're going to do it, fucking do it. And if you're going to do it well, and do it long enough to where, not just to where you see results, but to where you can't miss. And so when I started getting serious in my business, that's when I started seeing amazing growth. And I think people, they see some success, they back off, or they get complacent, or they hit a bump in the road and they stop. And so I just barrel through it, get serious, go pro, whatever you want to call it, right? But that's the biggest advice. That's the biggest change in my business personally. Don't just start, but get serious.
Great advice, man. Not that you read books, but Stephen Pressfield, Going Pro, talks about that.
Well, yeah, I know the titles to the books, and I can like extrapolate from that, right? But I think to give full credit, I think that was from I just saw a video on Alex Hormozi today on my run, one of his newest videos, and it's like his biggest mess ups or whatever. I think a celebrity or something like that. But anyway, he was like, don't just starting and going pro.
Yeah, it's so true though, man. Like, so many of us love to dabble out of fear because that if we fail, then it's a reflection of us as a human. When in reality, it's like, no, it's not. Like, even if it doesn't work, it's like, nobody cares.
Yep, exactly.
So great advice, man. Appreciate you. Thanks for being on the show.
Dude, thanks for having me.
Hey friend, thanks for listening to the show. And if you have any feedback for me about the show or any other guests that you'd want to see in the show, definitely shoot me a message. I love engaging with my audience and figuring out how I can provide the best value possible to the people listening to this show. Before you go, I only have one ask of you, and that would be to check out my 3 Tips Tuesday newsletter. It's 3 marketing tips every Tuesday specifically for the health and fitness entrepreneur to help them attract new leads. If you press the link in the description, it'll take you directly to the archive of all my previous newsletters, and you can decide for yourself if it's something for you. If you end up finding it helpful, you can just sign up for the newsletter and you'll get it in your inbox every Tuesday. Thanks again, and keep hustling, my friends.